My NVR Journey, or How I Learned to Live Without Biscuits. Welcome to my presentation. I'll be reflecting on my NVR journey so far. I'd love to answer questions if you have any, so if anything occurs to you, note down your question, I'll type it into the chat and I'll try my best to address them at the end. First, a little bit about me. My job title's a mouthful. I'm a specialist peripatetic looked after children and discontinuity support teacher. Try saying that 10 times fast. Actually, don't. From now on, we'll simply refer to it like this because everybody loves an acronym. Basically, I'm a teacher who comes to your house to do catch-up education and then I help people start going back to school. NVR Level 1. Firstly, I have to be honest, I wasn't expecting much when I agreed to undertake the NVR training. My manager asked if I'd be interested. Free CPD? I didn't even ask what NVR was. I figured I could look it up later, but free CPD during the workday, certificated no less. That'll come in handy for the annual review. Not a lot of thinking involved. That was a year ago. So it'll be the last time that I did something without thinking. Professionally, obviously. I must say, nothing ever really made me think very deeply about myself and my relationship with power dynamics because mostly my natural practice is pretty good. I never felt like there was anything I was missing for 95% of the people that I work with. Okay, I admit, there is a nominal 5% who really do seem like lost causes. Kids are lashing out, parents are lashing back, or hiding in fear. I've sat in a lot of meetings where someone said, outside of parental control. Parental control? It's a strange term in this day and age, isn't it? It's kind of lazy thinking and frankly it's outdated. I felt it, but I never really developed the language to properly describe my intuition. Parenting isn't about control, it's about authority. And let me say right here, they're not the same thing. Now, I wish I could say I did the NVR Level 1 course and the scales fell from my eyes, the clouds parted and a pure beam of revelation descended from the heavens. The course was so good I was forever rendered unable to recycle tired metaphors. But we all know that's not the case. It was okay. I liked some of the concepts about de-escalation and building relationships, but it didn't exactly change my life. At the end of the course, they asked for volunteers to do Level 2, and as I've already explained, I'm not one to look gift CPD in the mouth. NVR Level 3. So at the end of the Level 2 course I was asked if I'd be interested in doing the Level 3. Free CPD, as we know, is hard to turn down, but I felt like I'd pushed my luck enough so far. I doubted I could be released for the time required for Level 3 and I was right, but I didn't actually know that yet. NVR Supervision 1. The first stage was a supervision session. At this point my head was swimming with questions about how to apply the principles and it was reassuring to know I wasn't alone. I had assumed there was some systematic way of approaching it that I had missed in my reading, but Margaret and Denise reassured me that there's a lot of room for interpretation for each group. We took turns posing questions about NVR and then sat silently while the group suggested their ideas in response. It was difficult, but it did make me pay more attention to what people were saying instead of planning out my responses. One of the issues raised was how to explain concisely and clearly what NVR is, an elevator pitch if you will. Now, I know this is sailing perilously close to the dreaded sales pitch, but pragmatism dictates that if parents are expected to trust the process of NVR, they need a clear idea of what it is without having to attend around 30 hours of training. The issue of the elevator pitch interested me, but I couldn't find anything specific to NVR online. An idea began to brew in my mind about what I would include in a short information resource, but whatever ideas were starting to form would have to wait. There was the very real fact that our first group would be starting in a few weeks. We had the information, we had the participants, and now we needed to plan the specifics of the first few sessions. Planning. The first task was a brief case history of potential participants. It was useful and it mirrored how we approach cases we lacked this. I felt a bit frustrated that tasks and some of the content wasn't pre-prepared, but instead it was discussed in the planning sessions. I liked the group synthesis approach with the motive of empowering and involving each participant, but I disliked uncertainty in knowing how much to suggest or to listen due to my perception of a knowledge power dynamic between the psychologist and me, a lowly teacher. It was easy to understand why the approach was taken as a way of helping the new batch of group facilitators feel they've got a lot of autonomy and hence increasing motivation, but I found it hard. How did it come to this? One minute I'm Mr. Skeptical and now I'm like an anxious probationer worried about saying the wrong thing and looking stupid in front of somebody. Now that I was invested in the project, I suddenly realised that I was not nearly as confident in my knowledge as I thought I was, and this anxiety was bleeding over into my interpretation of the design phase. How must parents feel walking into an NVR group where the perceived power differential was even greater? Once I realised this anxiety about my lack of experience was actually logical because I had no experience, I resolved to do what I counsel my pupils to do. Be curious, be brave, grasp every opportunity to learn something new. Week 1. From week one, I could see the carers expressing elements of shame shielding. Yeah, I'm using the lingo now, but I'm trying to avoid a shame reaction for doing it. Given the difficulty of sharing traumatic caring experiences, I think maybe this concept could be used earlier in the training to help build a more trusting group dynamic. I enjoyed meeting the participants and hearing about their journeys, but I found it difficult to hear the parents say things like social work's sole reason for existence is to take people's children away, without intervening or trying to correct these statements. On a side note, I have to admit, I wasn't sure about the order of information being presented without a really clear plan of how it was all going to tie together. I felt that the order of information presented would benefit from more of a convergent system change approach to better build the concept in the group's mind. I was worried about this during the planning phase, but I didn't have the confidence to bring this up with the project leaders. Week 2. I had noticed a lot of resistance in the only 2 male members of the group in week 1. They never came back. Margaret and Denise had provided us with an electronic copy of Context magazine that had an article titled Fathers and Non-Violent Resistance. This could be a good source of context, I thought. See what I did there? The article talks about the barriers for men in talk therapies, but it quickly goes on to case study the most open-minded, growth-orientated group of fathers that I've ever heard of. Sounds great, but it didn't exactly match my experience of the men that I grew up with in the west coast of Scotland. I'd love to think with the right techniques that the fathers that I meet who are struggling would be game to give it a go and see it through, but honestly, I don't think that's going to be realistic. I mean, sitting in a group sharing the experience of parental powerlessness is a bad enough experience for a lot of people, but for a culture with vulnerability and open admission of feelings of failure is tantamount to sacrilege. I think if NVR is going to work for men like this, it might have to be done differently. How? I'm not sure on that yet. Week 3. Well, week 3 came around and it was time for my first big input into the group. One thing I learned was that parent groups are not quite as receptive to PowerPoint presentations as students or other professionals. In a lot of areas of my life, this would be good to keep in mind, to be mindful of the audience and remember that no matter how good the message is, if it's not delivered in a way that engages your specific audience, it's just going to get lost. It was a challenge to depart from a planned presentation because I do like to be very prepared, but the more informal style definitely worked better, and I think I would start with that next time. Week 4. By week 4 the men still hadn't returned, but we did have a new member, 2 if you count the supporter that they brought with them, who consistently talked over the parent and talked down their capacity and boasted about their own success over the mothers. Supporters are a central concept in NVR, but I found it was really hard when the supporter was actively undermining the parent's ability in front of everybody. Besides that, it really started to seem like the barriers were melting with the group and that we might be successful when we asked the carers to begin preparing for their statements. And that's as far as we got. 2020 brought with it the corona pandemic and lockdown measures, so the group had to be disbanded before any real progress could be made. We'd introduced new authority, shame shielding, supporters, basket behaviours and relational gestures, but having covered less than half the sessions, it felt like an unfinished piece of work. Looking back, it's been quite a journey from sticking my hand up for free CPD and biscuits. Given the lockdown restrictions, my next task was a second supervision session to discuss progress, questions and the assessment via Skype. Supervision 2. In the supervision session, it was hard to express my feeling that the men in the group might not return because of the challenge to their philosophy of gender and caring. I talked around this problem for a while, struggling to express my interpretation of West Coast male, but it turns out it's not just a West Coast thing, and that even though they've struggled with male groups and cultures where emotional expression is certainly not the norm, there were ways around it. Margaret and Denise suggested that the people who dropped out did so because of their assumptions, but by me guessing what those assumptions are, I might be revealing my own social graces around social class and gender performance. I did actually know this, but being reminded was really helpful. It made me consider that I could do with having a reflective look at my own graces again, that it would be interesting to find research about the difficulty that men might have in interacting with NVR. Reflections. So that was that, my last supervision session. Little chance of the group reassembling this year and still no sign of the cover teacher that was promised. Well, not quite. I still had to be assessed. No biscuits on offer, I might add. My kids have eaten them all and apparently biscuit delivery isn't essential work travel. Go figure. Overall, I've really enjoyed the opportunity to get to know the group better and to see how NVR could be different for everybody. I did note that listening and offering reflections and affirmations helped the group to open up. This is an important point, as I do believe that groups develop trust through social penetration when relationships and trust are built through mutual self-disclosure. I'm generally very confident, but the difficulties I experienced were obviously produced from anxieties about my knowledge and ability. Actually, most of my reflective notes focused on anxieties. I think I'd benefit if, when I'm feeling a bit of resistance and frustration, I check if I'm feeling a wee bit of low efficacy anxiety myself. Frustratingly, this is a life skill that I try to help other people learn, and goes to show that we do need to remain vigilant to these feelings in ourselves. So, where am I now? What does the future hold? Well, the essay had a word limit of 2,000 words and the first draft came back in at 6,000. Fortunately, I was able to salvage the mercilessly cut words to build the backbone of this presentation. Efficiency is my very boring middle name. Assuming this goes well and my NVR video works, I expect to get my level 3 award, and yet I feel like there's so much more that I need to know. Do men respond differently? Is my anxiety about being caught short of the required knowledge some sort of shame response? Is my scepticism a shame shield? I imagine a post-lockdown world there'll be an attempt to restart the pilot project, and I want to be involved. Surely they found a supply teacher by now. What next? So anyway, for now, I'm excited, I'm curious, and a little impatient to get back on the NVR horse to learn a bit more about myself and to help families struggling to cope with distorted power dynamics that are giving rise to violent behaviour in their own homes. Weirdly, it turns out that I'm not just in it for the biscuits anymore.